Well, thank you for joining us today as our series of podcasts. Our topic is going to be, drugs in our community here in town and how we're dealing with it, and some of the new drugs are out there. And we just really want to focus on how we can make Auburn a safer, better place. We have Jane Oliver that's going to be joining us. Jane, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jane Oliver. I'm a high school senior at Auburn High School. I'm also the co-founder and president of the Cayuga County Young Democrats. I'm pretty involved in the political environment here in Cayuga County, and I hope to continue that work when I go to college and plan to major in political science. I'm just really excited for this conversation with Brian and Joanne about synthetic drug use and kind of how we can fix these problems and how me as a person in Gen Z can help this issue. Thank
Thank,
you.
thank you, Jane. So Jane and I will be interviewing Joanne Mulholland. And,
Mhm.
and Joanne, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Joanne Mulholland. I'm the project coordinator for the Cayuga County Drug Free Community Coalition. We are a federally funded grant that operates underneath ONDCP, and we do drug prevention in communities, working on environmental strategies, and that's pretty much what I've been doing.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. We're going to jump right into it. So, Joanne, let me ask you the first question we have. What do you think is the most current trend in drugs used today in our community? What is the trend you're seeing out there?
So currently in Cayuga County, we are seeing a spike in synthetic drugs. Usually it goes by the name of folly, which is just a generic or street term name for synthetic Molly. It's not what it used to be, so they call it folly because it's fake. And we're seeing a huge increase in our community, and that everyone, is addressing our opioid crisis that's happening in our community, but um, the hidden problem that's not really being addressed is the synthetics.
Okay, so you know, what is a synthetic drug for people that don't know? Typically we know what the standard drugs are. I think we've been very much educated and versed in that, but can you go into detail? What is a synthetic drug?
A synthetic drug is a drug with the properties and the effects similar, known to like hallucinogens and narcotics, but having a highly slightly altered chemical structure to it. It's a drug created in order to invade restrictions against illegal substances. So it's a way for the active user to get around illegal drugs.
How did this start? So this started from what I'm seeing in the papers at a lot of these smoke shops, and that's how it started. And now it's illegal for these smoke shops to sell this type of drug. So why are we still seeing the problem? How are they getting it?
So to clarify that, it's not a federal law that makes it illegal to sell synthetics. Ours is a county legislation law that passed. Our task force got together and just kind of saw that we were having a huge problem with it, so they shut it down. But synthetics have kind of always been around. You see it more in lower income communities or average communities, just because it's easier and cheaper and you can make it out of anything. A lot of times, synthetics, people think about bath salts. That was like a big problem a few years back. People have thought about that. We're starting to see now a lot of the synthetic marijuana, which is really dangerous because that's really popular with our kids. Um, and you can find it in things like kratom, is being used, which is an alternative, um, that can be bought in tea, pill form, things like that. So it's just, I mean, that's really kind of the basics of it, but it's also made up of all different types of chemical makeup, the structure of it.
You and I were on a call once, and on a Zoom call, and you said that some of these products are coming in from out of the country, and people are shipping them in from all these different countries. It that's a problem I was unaware of.
Yeah, so unfortunately now the average consumer doesn't really go to a store. I mean, we're all guilty of it, especially during this pandemic. How many of us have ordered Amazon and UPS? How many packages are coming to our door, daily? Unfortunately, the black market on the internet is so easy to find for people, especially youth. And you just have to click a lot of times that you're over the age of 18 or over the age of 21, and then it can be shipped. And there's not really any checking, I guess, of age or who it's being sent to. This goes in correspondence with alcohol. I mean, minors can get on and order alcohol from Amazon or things and just click that they're over the age of 21. And then as long as they have a bank account that works as a debit card or an account that's connected to, just using Amazon as an example, they can get it. So they're coming in from all over. It's being shipped into the mail. They're getting sent in different ways. And that's what we're seeing.
What are you seeing with the difference between synthetic drugs and the traditional drugs that people used previously?
In my personal opinion, I believe that the synthetics are more dangerous because of ways that they're messing with the chemical balance in the brain. The other thing is we can't really treat people who are having a synthetic drug problem because they always have a different chemical makeup, and there's not actually a rehab program for synthetics. So sometimes it could take a person a long time to come down or detox in a hospital setting due to the fact that they don't know what the chemical makeup of the drug was. It's just constantly changing. And that makes it hard for things like probation officers and things like that to do urine screens because the chemical component is constantly changing that someone could actually be using, and the individual, either probation or treatment that's working with them, it's coming up negative, but really they're using actively, but the chemical makeup is not being read on a drug screen.
So let me ask you this. Okay, so you get somebody that's using the synthetic drugs, right? And is there any idea to educate them on what's in it? Do we have any idea that it's changing? What's in it that's damaging to them?
We don't really know because everything is different. I mean, it really depends on the chemical makeup. From what I have been told, I mean, I've heard from presentations I've sat through that doctors have seen brains look like cottage cheese, and pretty much like melting and molding differently than they're supposed to be. Um, I'm not a doctor or a specialist in this area, but we are seeing with synthetics, especially because it's so changing, it's hard to address. It's changing constantly every day. And that's the scary part about it, is how do you address a situation and help educate people when the chemical makeup is constantly changing.
You talked a little bit about like easy access on the internet. So I just wanted to ask you, how are kids getting their hands on synthetic drugs?
There's the black market. I mean, that's really a big one. I mean, a lot of kids too, synthetics. Synthetics, Molly seems to be popular with the high school generation, and so doesn't synthetic marijuana. Um, that's what we're gathering from them. The most information from youth that we have spoke to has been that they're getting it through the internet or older siblings. That's the biggest source usually for any substance use with youth, is usually siblings or internet, or family members or within the household themselves.
How would we educate the youth, because they're getting it from siblings, they're seeing people in their family use it, they may see it on the internet. If they're scrolling through something on Google, it may pop up. So how do we educate these kids so they know exactly what are synthetic drugs, what are the problems with using synthetic drugs, so they know, they're aware to stay away from these different things that they may find?
Basic general prevention is usually the best way. And we talk about the actual makeup of a synthetic drug and what it is and what it can do. um I mean, the hard thing is with synthetic, they've had our local EMS have had people under the influence of synthetics, and it's taken multiple officers or individuals to get the person to be coherent enough to be able to handle them to take them to the hospital, to get them the help they need, because sometimes they get like this Superman strength, and that's where the theory behind the bath salts of like eating the person, eating people. That's where we heard like that case that happened in Florida that was made national news. I mean, it's hard to teach kids about these things because the generation is so smart nowadays. The younger generation they're 10 steps ahead of us in everything they're doing. And the invincible feeling of being a youth. I mean, everybody has it. I'm a kid. It's not going to happen to me. My family doesn't have problems. It's not going to happen to me or things, but it only takes one use for something horrible to happen. And that's where people don't think. So I think it's the idea of educating about what are the risks you're taking by using a substance. We know that abstinence doesn't work. It's just not ideal. It's not the world that we live in. But we need to educate people on the dangers and the things that could happen to them, and what's going to happen down the road 20 years from now when you have an episode from using when you were a teen. That's all different things that people don't think about. People don't grow up saying they want to be an addict. They don't wake up today and say, I want to be homeless because I have a drug problem. That stuff doesn't happen until the first use. And that's what people need to realize is once that first use is initiated, you don't know what's going to happen after that. You could be someone who could walk away, and I hope that is your case. And I hope that you are lucky enough to not have an addiction problem from your first use. But there's a high population of people who are, and they don't know that until their first use.
So, what age do you think that we should start educating about the risks of using synthetic drugs?
And synthetics is a little harder. I think you would need to wait until like middle school until the education of understanding is a little higher. However, I do think that our community needs to implement a prevention program as early as kindergarten. And there's programs out there. I mean, you don't have to be talking to a kindergartner about putting a needle in their arm or something like that. There's other ways to do drug prevention that people don't think about. And you can talk about, things like the health conditions and why is it, healthy choices. There's other prevention strategies to help so that people choose not to use substances.
That was is there any national or models that this city can model as a good example of teaching these kids at a young age? It's very hard to teach a child that has, I think, there has no recognition of what it's like if they don't have ever dealt with it. Like, and those are the people that sometimes fall victim. Like, they don't have a parent that's been on drugs. They don't have any bad examples, and of course they know it's bad for them. But is there models that could teach us that we can implement as a community to help work with these kids at a younger age?
So I definitely think that there are some great evidence-based programming that's out there. One is called life skills training, and that can be implemented as young as preschool, I believe. And then there's, PAC's good behavior game, which is another great one that can be implemented in schools. There's strengthening families program. There's teen intervene. There's tons of programs out there that are really great evidence-based program. You just have to have that community buy-in. We find ourselves as a community reactive instead of proactive. We have this drug problem. So what's everybody doing about the opioids? The government, everybody's pushing tons of money on opioids, which I get. It's a problem, and it's horrible, and there's definitely overdoses and deaths from it. But at the same time, why are we pushing so much money to be reactive instead of proactive? Why are we not educating our doctors and our dentists and our veterinarians and our parents and, our teachers, our coaches, the religious sector, people who are engaged with our general community need to be educated on ways to help prevent these things. It takes one positive role model in a child's life to change their outcome. It's been proven if they have that connectivity to at least one person, they're less likely to use a substance later down the road.
So what exactly are the signs that a person may show if they're on synthetic drugs? I know you said the chemical makeup is different for every single person, but are there like signs that everyone exhibits when using synthetic drugs so that people who are friends, parents, or family members can be looking for in their loved ones?
Strange behavior. That's a big one I always get from people is, someone's behavior changed. They were very outgoing and very involved with their family, and now all of a sudden they're distant. Or those are usually early signs, but an interaction with somebody who's actively high from something is different from every single person. A lot of times it gets called in as it looks like an overdose. So the person's nodding out, they're maybe drooling, they may be passed out, they might be having heart palpitations. It's different for every single person, the way they react. And that's kind of with every substance. I mean, there's the key things that happen, but everybody has a different reaction. Same thing as everybody has a different reaction whether they drink a cup of coffee or if they have a soda or eat sugar. I mean, I can't give my poor child candy because he's off the wall. I mean, everybody is different in how they react. So we just need to be aware of basic signage and, that human interaction that we need. And I think that that's the key that we need to bring back to this community is that interaction of, instead of walking by someone on the side of the street who's maybe laying there and just moving on with our day, stopping and asking that person how their day is. Are they okay? Who knows? They may be in an overdose on the side of the road and you don't even realize it. That's the stuff. We need that human interaction again.
Wow, that's powerful. Because I think that it escapes us the pain that people are in when we see them in that situation. So I appreciate that. In your opinion, hypothetically, you have all the money in the world to create your own program, okay? And you're the legislator, you're the governor, and you can pass any law. What do you think we could do? Like, what would you do with an unlimited budget to help these people and get them into treatment? Like, what do you think the time frame is, the type of treatment? You have all the power in the world right now for the next 15 seconds. And then it goes away, and then we have to figure out how to get that at a local level and at a federal level. And that's a tough question.
Well, local level for us, there's nothing here for our kids. If they're not from money, there's nothing for them to do. Unfortunately, there are basic programs, but there's not, most of the time it ends up being like an aftercare program where a kid's hanging out, just sitting around shooting some basketball hoops. That's about it. We need to get, as a community, we need to find things for our kids to do that are fun and what they want to do and not what we think is the cool thing. What we thought is cool or what you and I thought, we're 3 different age groups. What we all think is cool is completely different. And for our youth, we need to go out and talk to them. We need to ask them, what do you want here? What do you want us to do for you? What do you want happening? What do you see as the problem? And, they're the next generation. They're going to be the ones that keep our community safe and healthy down the road. So if we can't protect them, how are they supposed to protect the future generation? That's the biggest thing I think I would implement here is creating a safe environment for kids. We have a lot of kids too. We have 2 working families, a lot of 2 working families in this community. The cost of childcare is through the roof, so it's cheaper to leave a kid at home with an older sibling, and we call them lock key kids. They're at home, door locked until mom and dad get home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. They've been home after school. What are they doing? Playing video games, getting depressed, isolation, all things that lead to substance use. So as a community, we need to get more involved and engaged with our younger generation. But on a federal, and for as far as treatment goes, I think the treatment world is phenomenal, especially in Cayuga County. We have so many resources here in Cayuga County. We're really blessed. But if I had it my way, if someone asked for help, they'd get help that instant. And it wouldn't cost money. Our insurance companies give them 28 days, usually, in a rehab. That's not enough to break 7-8 years of habits or however long someone's been in an active addiction. A lot of times they want to give up and leave, and they can, and a lot of times they can't go back depending on the rehab. I mean, a lot of laws have been passed for changes on those things, but it's not where it needs to be in the treatment world to get people the help they need and the resources they need. And then a lot is expected of someone in a treatment program. They're going to groups, they're going to individual counselings, they're seeing a doctor, they're seeing a therapist. And no one seems to think about helping them with the basic things, helping them with life skills again. Some of our most people in active addiction are the smartest people I've ever met, most creative people. They had to think outside of the box to survive, to live and get what they wanted, to do what they needed, to get what they needed. We should be channeling those people and having them help us create a better community. And federally, I can't help you there. I don't know what I would do federally, because being a part of a coalition, I've realized from all my trainings that every single community is different. And something that works here does not work in Syracuse. It doesn't work in, something that works in Auburn may not work in Moravia. So you just need to meet the community at the level it's at. And I think that it's really hard to pass federal laws when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, I really like what you said about community outreach and focusing on helping addicts that way. As for like policy federally, many people in my generation, Generation Z, have adopted a drug policy that favors rehabilitation, decriminalization, and legalization. Other countries adopted such policy, like Portugal, where they saw great improvement in addiction and drug-related issues and saw a lot of their addicts being reintegrated into regular society. We have also seen states in our own countries, such as Colorado and Oregon, which have gone down this path. So if, say, the nation went down this path, like as a whole, towards decriminalization, rehabilitation, how do you think this would affect the drug problem throughout the nation and in Cayuga County? Do you think focusing on rehabilitation and like legalization of different drugs and decriminalization, do you think that would help our issues that we're seeing?
I don't think it would help. It would mask. I think the model which you're referring to is called harm reduction, which is becoming, extremely popular. We see it a lot with like heroin users, safe injection sites, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared to see what would happen. I'm not saying because someone is smoking marijuana, they should be locked up for the rest of their life. Like, that's not what I feel at all. I do believe that we need to protect our youth, and sometimes with adult use leads to youth use because it's easy, accessible. We know the brain right now is not fully developed to the age of 28 has been the latest. So that part scares me, but I agree on some parts of the decriminalization. The rehabilitation, I haven't really seen a study that fully jumps out to me personally. But I do think it's something that we could consider, but harm reduction and stuff like that is hard for people to wrap their mind around, because people still are with that stigma, that old school stigma that an addict is, a loser, a scumbag, they're homeless, they're worthless, and they don't, it's certain races people assume, and nationalities and genders, there's all these things that go into play, but people don't realize that addiction just doesn't pick and choose. It's anybody. It's every culture I've ever met there's addiction in. So I just think that that's a hard question to answer fully, I guess, for you.
Well, Joanne, one more question for you, and this is something that's been true to my heart because I always thought this is. I think that when you get somebody addicted to drugs and they're really struggling, they'll do anything. They'll do anything to get the drug. And you know, how do we make it safe for them? How do we make it like a safe haven? Like, because even when they get the drug, they're not happy they got it, especially when they know what's going on. They know they're feeling the struggle. How do we can we do anything?
So, in my opinion, my personal opinion, addiction is the top mask. So underneath addiction, there's a reason people are using. People don't use just to use. When they're in that active addiction phase, I'm sorry, I will say that. People are using because they're depressed, they're lonely, they don't like themselves, they don't like their family life. Trauma has happened to them. Um, there's all these things that people need to heal from the inside to get to that top mass. And that's a lot of work and that's hard. And I give credit to the people that walk in and out of Chad's doors every day that are doing that for themselves. Most all like respect ever, because I don't know if I could sit there and look at myself and pick myself apart on the inside when I'm already feeling down. And that's what they do to heal. I mean, that's how they have to heal. And they need to address the issues of what's the underlying reason of why they're using. So I don't say making it safe. I mean, I don't know if there's really a way to make it safe. There's a way to make it educated. Obviously we don't want people getting synthetics and fake marijuana and things like that can cause to other health conditions, because the original drug itself does so much damage already. So,
Well, Joel, I have to say this. Is that I learned a lot, but mainly I learned a lot about you, like your compassion for these people that are struggling, and it comes across, and I say that because, like, it's actually given me different views that I wouldn't, so I want to thank you for joining us, and Jane, Oliver, thank you as well, and I really appreciate this conversation, and I hope it helps people, and if more, I hope it has us asking more questions. So thank you.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to hear, especially a younger generation's point of view on things. I mean, having previous conversations with Jane, she's very, into the policy and things like that. And that's the important piece for down the line and road, great thing for you to be involved and engaged in. But I just hope that sometimes people look at all sides of it. Talk to somebody who's actively in addiction and say, what made you use? Why do you still use? Those things, those questions, those are things that I've learned over the 5 years of being in my position that blow my mind. Some of the most respected people that I've ever met have been in the lowest places, and those are things that we need to put aside as a humane society and just be kind. Be kind to one another.
So what we do now is we go into this after the call thing, and I got some fun things to talk about. All right. So, but there's one thing that I want to talk about. It's a little serious. I always believe that seeing people struggle with addiction, there should be, if somebody physically hurts you, you get a restraining order against that person, right? They mentally or if they verbally threaten you, you get a restraining order. Why can't they get restraining orders against some of their drug dealers and some of their people they associate with? Even and I talked to some people, they say, well, the problem is people, they have to follow through with the phone call, but the threat of them making a phone call at any time or somebody seeing with those people, I think there should be legislation.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard. I mean, so the mental health law, if someone says they're going to kill themselves, they can hold them up to 72 hours, right?
Yeah.
An active user can shoot up on heroin, overdose 6 times in a row. EMS has to reply to those calls all 6 times in a row. They can't hold that person. So why can't we hold them on a mental health order?
Wow.
That's stuff that I wish personally are things that we could address, but we can't. I mean, their intent is to self-harm. They hurt them, they overdose multiple times in a row. Think about all the resources you're putting into that. Your EMS is applying to that. 911 dispatch is calling it out. Your firefighters are taking up time. They're going to it. And then your stigma comes into place because they become complacent because they're seeing the same thing over and over again, and the fatigue. Then you get the average community member who doesn't understand addiction, who maybe lives across the street and saw that the EMS came to the house 4 or 5 times in a row. And they're like, that person's just a drug addict. That person just needs to die. You know how many times I've heard that from people? And it's like, no, that person was in a bad place. That person's trying to hurt themselves.
Wow.
So why can't we do anything on a legislation level for that? That's what I would love to see, because I think that when someone is battling and they really need that help, they should be able to be held to get that help. But at the
I don't
same
think we
time,
could
the
do it
person has to want the help.
I don't know what they're doing local level, but as you know, I'm running for legislator, right? But more importantly, Jane Howard is going to be president. So we just got, as she goes up to the ranks, these are information needs to shoot it up to her because she's going to be a star in Washington at some point,
Yes.
or Albany. So
But when you think about it, that's the stuff that
that
people
is,
don't think about, the average person doesn't think about. And I had never thought about that till I talked to a volunteer firefighter, and he told me in one day he had responded to the same house 7 times
wow.
in a day.
Crazy.
And there's nothing they can do. The person gets out, they don't go to the hospital, they refuse treatment at the hospital. There's all these things that happen that people don't realize is involved with addiction. There's so much from that first use to that phone call to the hospital trip, all the resources that go into it. There's so much.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, because I do know for some circumstances that you have to, even with like an ambulance, you have to, like the person who the ambulance gets called on, you have to accept it. You can't just randomly call if you're worried about someone having like an overdose.
Mhm.
They can say no. And I just feel like there has to be some type of legislation, like you're saying, to go around that, because I believe addiction, it has to do with mental health and what we've been talking about. It's definitely a deeper issue. Like educating the community about drug use, but also about mental health. I feel like now mental health is more of like a topic that we discuss, but there needs to be some serious like national community initiatives to discuss these issues, to get people the help they need, so that before they even go to the drugs, that we're able to help them right when they start saying, like, so they're able to say, like, I'm depressed, I'm feeling down, all these different things, I want to hurt myself, so we can stop them right then and there before they go and harm themselves even more by using drugs.
Absolutely. In the mental health piece, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's been proven, like in the African American culture, African American men don't go get help. They don't ask for help, and what happens in their house stays in their house. It's the culture. It's a culture difference. It's the same thing with old school Italians. What happens in your house stays in your house. It doesn't leave. So if you really need that help, you're not going to go and ask for that help. And that kid's not going to go to school and say, I'm really sad. You know why? Because that's their culture. Their family culture is, no, we don't talk about problems like that. You keep it to yourself or you keep it in the house. And that's a lot of times, unfortunately, we need to start at our family culture. You're right. We need to start talking in our own households. And as parents, we need to educate. My son is 4 years old, my youngest. And when I first started this job, I was like, I was brand new to prevention, never worked in prevention. And talking about brand recognition, And I'm like, yeah, okay. So we're walking through Wegmans. At the time, my son was probably just turned 3. My dad drinks Budweiser beer. every so often, and it's not like it's a problem or anything, but we're walking through and he goes, "Hey, mommy, that's Papa's beer." And that's when it clicked to me that we can start educating our kids as young as 3 years old, because he recognized it. He knew that was a Budweiser beer. So things like with marijuana that are coming up, the lollipops, the gummy bears, the cookies, that's where you're going to see the problem. Because mom and dad are going to get high, they're going to get lazy, you're going to leave a bag of gummy bears around. Little Johnny's going to come up and eat a whole bag of gummy bears and going to be having problems. And that's the stuff that we're going to run into, I think, with legalization and stuff like that. There's a lot that comes with it that people don't think about.
Wow. You know, one of the things you said during this time, you said some of the smartest people you ever met were people using, and I think just those statements alone could change the stigma because, you know, I years ago I knew a person that had a homeless task in New York City, and they would work with this homeless lady, and they came up and asked her did she want anything. She'd always say no, but finally she gave her a hug, and she was probably not looking in the best conditions. And she broke down and cried. Said that was the first time somebody showed her any love and expression in decades. And that lady now is a teacher, right? I don't know how she got through the background check, but she got through it and she's a teacher and they helped her and she was a very educated person. So I think by you saying that and you having your love for those people and not just being a job, because I know you have to take this home with you, is going to help because people need to hear the side of it. So I'm going to loosen this up a little bit. You
Okay.
said fun in Auburn, right, for young kids. I am a person that doesn't know what to do, but I do my fair share with sports because I don't know nothing else. Okay. I would not be good at throwing a 3-year-old birthday party or anything like that. The cake would probably come in late. I'd probably forget about the ice cream. I probably wouldn't invite the right kids, and they would all run around and be a hot mess. What do you think? Like, here we go again. I'm put it back on you. We're gonna try to get these young kids involved in something. We're not gonna use sports because that's the easy scapegoat. What else is there for kids that don't want to play sports?
So we'll see what Jane says, how close I am to on point here. So from what I've gathered, the young generation loves coffee. They love to be in the internet world, yet they still want to be around each other. They want to hang. So from my understanding, the way I put it together when I talk to kids is they want a Starbucks, but they want a Starbucks for them. They want a place where they can go after school. It's their hangout spot. I'm really probably dating myself now, but it reminds me of remember Saved by the Bell? They used to have the kid hangout place, that kind of stuff. That's what I feel like kids need. They just need a place on a Friday night. They want to go hang out. They can. They can go sit with their friends. They don't have to go out to a cornfield or go to a house party. They can actually go and sit down and it sounds crazy. They love coffee. When we hook up with Simple Roast, it's the number one thing that always happens for us. The kids go crazy over it. They love the coffee. They want to talk to us, but it works. I bring coffee and kids talk to me. It's just, I think that's what you guys want. Am I right? You guys want a space, your own space. You can hang
I think that's definitely
creative.
Definitely true. Just having something to do because in Auburn, especially, there's not a lot of stuff for kids to do. Just having a nice environment, definitely making sure it's aesthetic because, like you were saying about internet uses, people they want to be able to post on Snapchat, what they're doing. They want to show Instagram, especially with the rise of people wanting to become influencers and stuff like that. Having that space where you can just talk to people, you can have some coffee, you can post pictures, something like that. I feel like would be really nice just to give kids a place, a safe space to be without running into other different things or getting bored, which leads to them doing other harmful activities.
I mean, when before COVID, you'd go downtown on a Friday at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and all the seniors, juniors, and seniors in high school were hanging out eating food downtown.
Mm-hmm.
It's after a while, those restaurants all close, and then it becomes the bar scene. So what happens to the kids? They go home or they find trouble.
Yep.
One or the other. I mean, I was an infamous kid. I found if there was trouble, I was finding it. If there was a party, I was finding it. But I was also an athlete too, and my mom and dad were really big on making sure that we were involved in something. If we weren't involved in something, we were having a job. That was like the rule. You did something or you worked, one or the other, because my mom didn't want us getting in trouble. And but that's what I've gathered from kids. They want a cool place to hang. They just that's my dream job. My dream job is to open a place in Auburn that these kids can come and just be themselves, hang out, be creative, do art, do music, be on the internet, eat some cool food, things that they can take pictures of. That's the environment we need to create instead of worrying about bringing in another bar or another restaurant downtown. We need to start worrying about our kids.
I think we all can do that. Us three. We can just go find somebody like Angela Diabo, if she's listening,
Absolutely.
Auburn Public Theater, and set that up. Well, thank you guys. I think this went really well.
Absolutely.
It was very conversational, and Joanne, I'm really happy about your passion for these guys.
Thank you. I
You
care a lot.
You had me almost emotional for a minute, and I don't want to be emotional on no podcast, But I was like, man, that was like, because it was from the heart. And it really came across. Didn't you feel like that, Jane?
Yes, definitely. Like oh my God, I want you to like run for something because
Yeah,
you're
I
just
want
so
to
passionate.
I totally
Like,
run for legislation, but I don't know how I feel about that.
You
Or
should
even like
run.
the school board. There's gonna be elections with the school board. Like you're just so passionate about what you do, and we need someone like involved in the school district where you can talk about like those different like education programs that we can use. Like I'm a student representative, and I really want you to give me like a full list because I'm looking for
Absolutely.
something to speak for on Tuesday. So if you want to show up and like speak about it with me.